Under the pale hush of dawn, when the desert's breath still clung cool to the earth, Elias Boone rode into the Apache settlement. His mare's hooves pressed soundless into the dust, the world holding itself in a kind of reverent stillness, as if the day had not yet decided what it would become. A haze of wood smoke lingered over the low-slung lodges, catching the early light in a shimmer that reminded him, uncomfortably, of heat mirages far off on a trail. Somewhere a crow called, sharp and hollow, and it seemed to announce him before he could dismount. He had not seen this place in 3 years. Not since the day Dakota Greyhawk, chief and guardian of this land, had looked at him with a stern kindness that felt heavier than scorn. That memory lay coiled in his chest, ready to tighten with each slow step toward the chief's lodge. He carried no gun on his hip today. It was a decision, not a habit, one that made him feel exposed and strange. Dakota emerged before Elias reached the doorway, the morning sun catching in the streaks of gray that threaded his hair. The man's presence filled the open air with the quiet certainty of a mountain, rooted, immovable. Behind him, a figure stepped into the light, and Elias's breath hitched in his throat. Ayoka Greyhawk, the chief's daughter, stood with her hands folded loosely before her, her gaze direct, neither shy nor bold, simply unyielding. She was 20 now, older than the last time he'd seen her, the girl's softness tempered into a woman's calm strength. Dakota spoke, his voice low but carrying, as if the wind had been waiting for his words. "Can you marry my daughter?" The world tilted. Elias could feel every eye in the village though he could not see them. The question was too sudden to belong to the moment, yet too deliberate to be mistaken. Ayoka's face remained unreadable, but her eyes, dark and steady, studied him like a man she had already weighed and was waiting to see if he would notice the scale. Elias's mouth opened, but no sound came. His thoughts scrambled, colliding between the quiet, aching solitude he had grown used to and the long-buried warmth the question threatened to stir. He had not come here for this. Or perhaps, some unspoken part of him whispered, he had. Dakota waited without impatience. The silence grew heavy as iron. Elias felt the weight of it pressing against his chest until he thought he might break. But he said nothing. Not yet. Later, at the trading post, the air was thicker than it ought to be, the heat of the day turning each breath into a slow swallow of grit. Elias bought flour and nails, keeping his head low. But he could feel the glances, furtive, lingering just long enough to sting. A pair of ranch hands muttered near the grain sacks, their words too low to catch fully, though their laughter was sharp enough to pierce. It wasn't the first time he'd heard it, the talk of how Elias Boone had once been quick to draw steel too quick, and how it had cost him something precious. That scar still ached under his collarbone, not from pain, but from the memory of what had followed. Some wounds heal like skin, some don't. He had never decided which kind his was. Outside, the street shimmered in the sun. Ayoka passed by him without looking, a basket hooked over her arm. As she neared his horse, she set an apple on the saddle's worn leather. No word, no glance, just a small, sure motion. By the time he stepped toward it, she was gone. He didn't touch it. Not yet. The next day, a storm rolled through, sudden and hard, rattling the roofs and tearing down half the Greyhawk corral. Elias rode over without thinking. The air still smelled of wet earth and lightning when he found Dakota and Ayoka working among the scattered rails and restless horses. Without speaking, he joined them. The work was slow, lifting beams, driving nails, coaxing skittish animals back into place. Rainwater clung to Ayoka's lashes, her braid damp against her shoulder. Once, she handed him a mallet before he had asked for it, their hands brushing in a moment that felt longer than it was. Neither pulled away quickly. By the time the corral stood again, the sky had opened to a clear, pale blue. Ayoka stood by the gate, watching a colt circle its mother. Her lips curved, not into a smile exactly, but into something lighter than her usual composure. Elias caught himself watching her too long, until she turned and met his eyes. "You do not run from the storm," she said, her tone not a compliment, not an accusation, just the truth. That night, Elias sat by the river, the stars reflecting like lanterns in the slow-moving water. He thought of the woman he had once loved, the one whose absence had taught him how deep a man could sink without drowning. Regret was a stubborn thing, it could outlast reason. The river carried dead leaves past his boots, taking them somewhere he would never see. He found himself wishing it could take a man's mistakes the same way. Soft footsteps pressed into the damp earth behind him. Ayoka stood there, the apple from 2 days before in her hand, polished until it shone faintly in the moonlight. Without a word, she set it in his palm and left him alone again. The next morning, Dakota came to him. They stood outside, the sun not yet burning the chill from the air. "The storm will take her too," Takoda said, "unless you stand." The words were neither plea nor threat, but Elias felt them settle into him like seeds finding soil. Later that week trouble came to town. A group of drifters, loud with whiskey and boredom, filled the saloon with their voices. Elias had gone in only to collect a tool he'd left with the smith next door, but he heard the shift in tone before he saw the scene. One of them had cornered a yoka near the bar, his words low and curling with a kind of malice that made the skin crawl. Elias stepped forward. No gun. No raised voice. Just the quiet firmness of a man who had decided, long before, that he would not leave this moment behind as another regret. He put himself between the man and a yoka. "You're in my way," the drifter sneered. Elias didn't move. His gaze was steady, calm in a way that made the air feel different. Something in it reached the man before the brawl could, and after a tense beat, the drifter's smirk faltered. One by one they slipped out into the street, their laughter hollow now. When the room was quiet again, Elias turned to find a yoka watching him. There was no gratitude in her eyes, at least not the shallow kind. Only a deep, measuring look, as if she had just confirmed something she'd suspected all along. That night Elias went to Takoda's lodge. The firelight painted the walls in slow-moving gold. Ayoka sat beside her father, her braid loose now, falling over her shoulder. Elias's voice was low, almost rough. "Yes," he said, "if she'll have me." Ayoka's hand found his, her fingers warm and certain. Outside, the wind shifted, carrying the first scent of rain. And somewhere inside him, a space he had kept empty for years filled, quiet and sure, like the earth drinking in a long-awaited storm.